Okay, this is a brand new video made for your class right now. This is Tuesday. We just met yesterday. Tomorrow is surgery. And I was getting everything set up and discovered I had no video lecture for a couple of the chapters that I wanted to make sure were covered. I may or may not have had some originally. I have no idea, but I couldn't find any. So what I've done is I have put chapters 32 and 33 together, and that's what this video lecture is going to be. So this is for our week 7. And I'm going to do another one for chapters 34 and 35 to go with week 8. But right now, I'm like squeezing this in between doctor's appointments and tutoring, and they're working on fixing my ceiling right now, too. So there you go. All right. Let me, got a song stuck in my head again. Let Me Entertain You is the song from Shakespeare Sisters. Don't know if anyone. So here we go. I have our thing here. All right. Plants. That's what we're doing. I'm going to go flying through some of this. It's going to be way faster than if we were in class. One, because I'm going faster through some of them and kind of skimming. I still recommend you take a look at the full PowerPoint and or the textbook. It's also going to go faster than in class because no one's here to talk other than me. And so it will just be when I get distracted. So here we go. We are going to talk about organic crops and a whole bunch of other stuff. So here we go. I think hopefully everybody knows that plants are going to make sugar. Whenever we did Bio 1, 2, 3, we covered photosynthesis and we talked about it making glucose. That's the sugar. So that's what this is talking about. It's reminding you it takes the carbon and, the carbon dioxide and the water and the sunlight, and then it creates sugars for itself and then releases oxygen for us. So there you go. Reminder about our photosynthesis and how it's pulling everything up. What's really funny, I can't remember if I deleted the slides or not, but if you remember back in 1, 2, 3, chapter 2, we covered cohesion and adhesion, and all of that is involved in this. Earlier in the term, we talked about the roots had these little hairs off of it, the root hairs that increases the surface area, and that way it increases more of what it can take in. And we are going to, here we go. This is the main thing to remember. Xylem up, phloem down. Trust me, remember this. Xylem up, phloem down. We will say this so many times. What this means is the plant is pulling the stuff in from the ground and it's going up. That's the xylem up. So that's bringing all the stuff up it needs. Then it's doing its thing, photosynthesis and whatnot, and then phloem down. So the phloem down is basically the feeding. So xylem up, phloem down. That's what this is showing you. It is just talking about how it's bringing up. This shows you the xylem, it's the phloem. It's even got the, yeah, there we go. See, it's talking about the cohesion that I just mentioned a moment ago. And basically, this little picture tells you everything, but it all comes down to xylem up, phloem down. So there are adaptations to photosynthesis because, I think we covered this in Bio 1, 2, 3 also, that if it's not wet enough outside, it needs to help protect itself. So that's here. The stoma. We have our stomata, which is like an opening. It's like a mouth. I always say it's like a mouth. It opens and closes. And so what happens here is when it's open, it's able to let the carbon dioxide in, the oxygen out, but it's also always going to lose a little bit of water every time it's open. When it closes, it keeps it all trapped inside. So I don't think I have a slide. We've got the CAM plants and the C3 and C4 plants. And again, I think we briefly covered these in Bio 1, 2, 3. But the stomata have to close in order to keep from losing too much moisture. So think about a cactus in a desert, it's very dry. it can't afford to keep it open. Otherwise, it's going to lose all of the fluid, and there's very little water there. So it needs to hold on to it. So there are extra little things so it doesn't have to keep taking in a lot of fresh carbon dioxide. We covered this definitely in 1, 2, 3 when we were doing all the metabolisms and we talked about like the carbon fixation and stuff. So again, two separate transport systems, xylem and phloem. Xylem up transports the xylem sap. So that's the water and the dissolved minerals from the ground pulled up. So xylem up. Phloem is going to bring it all the way down to where it needs to go. So phloem down. Angiosperms, if you remember, angiosperms are the flowering plants. The phloem contains food conducting cells. And there you go. And I think, oh, I got rid of the picture. So, meh. We've already talked about this too. So the phloem coming down, that's going to be the sugars. That's why we keep saying photosynthesis and then it comes down, because photosynthesis is when it made the sugar. So the phloem down, that is bringing you the sugars down. Showing you again, xylem up, phloem down. This is showing you a sugar sink. That means it's holding on to all of their sugars. And so you could use this as a potato or whatever. This one I think is a beet, I think. And the healthier the plant, the more phloem they've made, the more sugar it's made. And so it's putting it in the tuber. And I talked briefly about this a while ago when I talked about corn and potatoes, and that they are basically holding the excess sugar. So then if there's not enough nutrients, it can take from there. And that's literally what this is too. Useful products harvested as they're transported within the plant. So like maple sap for your maple syrup. I started to say sugar, and latex for latex material. So maple sap collection, they just tap the plant and they're literally grabbing the phloem as it comes out. And then latex from a rubber tree. What I like to point out here is notice that these cuts are on one side. It's not on both sides, because if you cut all the way around the tree will die because you will have cut all of its food source. So they literally do on one side. So it's still doing the xylem up here and then phloem down. If you cut all the way around, the tree will no longer be able to do all of its stuff. Plant nutrients and the soil. We've got macronutrients and micronutrients. Macronutrients mean it needs it in large amounts. Micro, small amounts, but they're all required. Here are the various things. So we've got macronutrients, listed them there, and micronutrients. So the macronutrients make up 99.7% of the plant weight. The micronutrients, 0.3%. And again, very small, but without any of these, the plant will suffer. The availability of the nutrients in the soil will affect how the plant grows, how nutritious it is. All of this is going to come back to that organic comment at the very beginning. So nutrient deficiencies can be fixed a lot of times with the proper fertilizer, because if the soil is lacking something, adding it in should help it. This is why one of the healthiest ways to keep a agricultural field going is to do crop rotation, because certain crops strip more of one type from the soil and release more of one. So if you constantly rotate your crops, that it's taking what is in excess and leaving something for the next, you have a much healthier soil and healthier crops. There are inorganic fertilizers that might contain naturally occurring inorganic compounds and synthetic ones. Organic fertilizers are totally biologically done stuff like compost. And so I'm pretty sure most people have heard of a compost heap. So like your leftover food, you're putting it there, you're letting it rot, you keep rotating it, moving it around. So as it rots, it's creating its own soil. This is a fertilizer you can then put in your garden. I say it this way because a lot of people, when they think organic fertilizers, they think you're just talking about poop. It is not just poop. It is anything plant material that will rot that you can use. Um, there you go. I tried to do it myself. I can't because one of the main things that happens is it will grow mushrooms and allergic. But I really want to do my own compost one day. I just have to find how I can do that and not make myself sick. Here's some images, how to tell if your plant is missing something. So the change in color will show you a lot of the deficiencies. And if this had been one of those classes that we had a much longer time for, so like when I was in Valdosta SGSC, we had 17-week long terms. When I taught this, we actually conducted an experiment on plants that we had like a complete, it was all water-based, so it was a liquid minerals and everything. But we had a plant that we grew that had everything it needed, and then we would have a few that were deficient in things, and then you had to figure out what it was deficient in. It was really cool, but it takes like over a month to do it, and that just doesn't seem feasible in a 9-week course. So, but it's cool. Seriously, check it out. Okay, so fertile soil. Yes, there is healthy dirt and there is unhealthy dirt. So healthy dirt has a lot of stuff throughout it. It also has that word. I can never do that one right because I always say humus, which is something entirely different, but it's close to that. But that is decaying organic material. So again, like if you're taking your food scraps and letting it rot and rotate it, this is what you are creating. This provides great nutrients for your soil. Um, that's just the chemistry on it. Not going to worry too much about it. It's just showing you how it's pulled up. Our survival depends on soil. So the more stuff we do to mess up our dirt, the worse it is for us. And that's kind of a thing that so many people seem to not quite grasp currently. Science has been stating this for ages. Um, the average farmer knows this, but a lot of other people seem to ignore it. They think dirt is dirt, and that is not the case. So, we also have a lot of erosion and chemical pollution that's messing stuff up. We're going to get into more stuff in just a moment, too. Water conserving irrigation, erosion control, and the use of herbicides and fertilizers are some of the ways for good soil management. I also talked about crop rotation as being important. Understanding the limits of your soil is important. Oh, I think I actually have a picture of the Dust Bowl coming up. So I'll get to that in a second. This is just showing you a sinkhole from using too much groundwater. Again, just because you can tap it and pull some water out doesn't mean you can take all of it. And we as humanity are kind of stupid a lot of times and decide to overuse everything. And this is a result of taking too much of the groundwater and not leaving enough for support. This is the picture I thought we were coming to. The dust storm. Anyone who's taken history, you should have already learned about this dust storm. And this was caused from basically using's not the right word. Their fields, they kept growing all the same stuff. It stripped the soil. So it was no longer healthy soil. The no longer healthy soil couldn't hold on to anything anymore. So then when it came through, it just ripped it up. It is important to take care of your soil. So yes, you need healthy dirt because without healthy dirt, you are not going to have plants. You're not going to have something that the roots can grab hold of and grow and be nutritious. So taking care of our dirt is key. This, like I said, was from basically stripping it. They just kept growing the same crop over and over and over. And you can see when people do this that it might be great for a couple of years, but then the quality starts to go down, and it's because you've stripped the soil. A different example, not agricultural, but this happens as well, is the overuse of things like sanitizing stuff, like over sanitizing, is we have destroyed a lot of the things that live in the dirt from over sanitation, sanitizing, over sanitizing. And we've talked a lot about homeostasis throughout this thing. Homeostasis, we've always talked about inside our body trying to keep balanced. That happens outside our body as well. The whole planet needs to stay balanced. And when you knock it out, it has things in place trying to fix it. But we as humanity keep thinking we know better and we can just make it do what we want. And that's not quite the case. This is using too much fertilizer on the land because, and I'm going to say it's not just regular fertilizer. This can also happen from like raising livestock, cattle and goats and pigs and that kind of stuff. Because when it rains, it's going to make that continue to move along, which can then go into a creek or a stream, flow down into the lake. It puts way too much fertilizer in there, which causes the algae in there that's naturally occurring to whoosh, bloom something fierce. But when it does that, it then takes up all the oxygen from the water, which then kills the fish and whatnot in the water. So this is known as eutrophication, and it's a bad thing. There you go. Organic farming. Organic farming means that you are being organic. You are staying true to just the life of it, basically. You are not using chemicals. You're not supposed to be using chemical fertilizers, chemical pesticides, chemical herbicides. You're using natural things for this. So again, rotating crops. Notice that's the very first one here. Using compost to blend in there in order to make healthier soil. Bringing in natural predators and stuff. So like ladybugs and things like that. There are ways to keep things in control without using chemicals. And that is what organic farming is. Let me also say, if you are a true organic farmer, that is what it is. In the United States, to have something stamped as certified organic means it's under a certain percent. So if you truly want to make sure it's 100% organic, you still have to research the companies, because for the United States, they can be stamped organic, certified, and still have a small percent of chemical used. So it all is based on what you're looking for. Now, sustainable. Sustainable means never taking more than you can replace. And that is supposed to be the main thing about agriculture. You're not supposed to take everything out of the soil and leave nothing behind. The current way we do things right now, this year, 2025, is not always sustainable. Our current place seems to be, let's take everything we can and oops for down the road. It was that way for a long time. We started to make a lot of changes to try to make a much more sustainable lifestyle. So our children, grandchildren, and great grandchildren will still have something. We're not really there right now, not this year. There are people out there who are still fighting for sustainable everything, sustainable agriculture, sustainable energy, everything. But our current situation in the US right now is kind of the opposite of sustainable. So, sustainable agriculture, conservation minded. So, don't waste anything. Environmentally safe. Again, don't waste. And practiced in the same manner for many years without ever depleting anything. So, this is what is known as sustainable agriculture. That means doing the crop rotation, doing the compost, the natural predators, keeping everything as flowing and healthy as physically possible. To earn certified organic designation must be grown and processed following a set of strict guidelines. So this is what I was just talking about. So this is where it's supposed to be a very specific way. Percentage of studies that reported each result. They did a test back in 2011, or this was published in 2011, about the minerals, vitamins, nutrients, and which one was higher, which one was lower, and whether or not there was any difference. If you look here, you can see that in organic produce, it was more than half. Does that mean organic produce is immediately better? No. This is not really enough because it's actually based on the soil. And the healthier the soil, the healthier the plant, the more nutrients. This can be done with organic and inorganic ways. Like we talked about with the synthetic fertilizers, you can help replenish stuff in the soil. What matters is the soil health. Now, depressing parts here, but you have to know it. Every 2 seconds, somebody dies of hunger in the world. And it's not just the other side of the world. This happens in the US as well, just so you know. There's a lot of people who believe that plant biotechnology and genetic engineering can help overcome the tragedy of world hunger. We talked about this in Bio 123 when we talked about GMOs, and I talked about golden rice and like the drought resistant and stuff like that. And so that's what this is covering. So why is research on the protein content of crop plants so important? This is why. Because malnutrition oftentimes is protein deficiency. And you can't just go, well, just then have more cows. Because the amount of food a single cow consumes, you could have fed entire families on that amount of food. So if you're actually trying to help world hunger, the answer is not more meat. That is actually going the opposite direction, because the more livestock you feed and water to eat, the less food and water is going towards people. One of these chapters, we actually have a pyramid, and we discuss all that. Plant nutrition and symbiosis. We already talked mostly about this stuff. We already covered mycorrhizae. I can't get the flipping word out right now, but we talked about this at the beginning of Bio 124, where we talked about the fungus that grows on the plant root like this. And so that increases the surface area. And so that makes it where the tree root is able to pull in and get more of what it needs, and then it helps feed the fungus. And so this is a symbiotic relationship. This is a good thing. Same thing here. These little nodules, it's doing the same thing. This is actually a healthy thing, which I think is funny because the first time I saw it, I thought it was bad. Yeah. So Venus flytrap, this is a carnivorous plant. It gets its nitrogen basically from eating things. This is a Venus flytrap, love them. It's a little different than the pitcher plant. The pitcher plant is shaped like this. The pitcher plant has like a nice scent, and so it goes down, the insect goes in there for the fluid, the phloem, and then can't get back out, and it drowns, and then it dissolves it. It uses a specific enzyme to dissolve it. This one, I don't know if you can see. I'm using my cursor. I hope you can see it. These little red spots right there. Those are actually these tiny little hair-like structures that come up. It's when those hair-like structures are triggered that it goes and it closes and traps the insect in there, and then squishes it and dissolves it and then slurps it up. It's pretty cool. Reminding you, it takes it up to go out. So it's going to take in the water from the soil as well as the nutrients and whatnot, cohesion and adhesion, like I was talking about for the xylem up. And then it goes all the way up And then the stomata, remember, it opens like a mouth, and it's going to release some of the water out there. So you can also think about dew in the morning and stuff like that. So chapter 33. Look at how many slides I have left. Okay. I kept this slide. I normally don't do the introduction slides, but I kept this one because I find it flippin' fascinating. It throws me that the average, well, typical US adult drinks 3 cups of coffee per day at a cost of more than $1,000 per year. Threw me. I tend to drink more than 3 cups of coffee, but I brew my own. And so I don't know if that really counts for the $1,000 per year. I have never figured out exactly how much mine costs, but I might out of curiosity. So, coffee, one of my favorite plants, right? All right. This is showing them harvesting the coffee beans, which is, I think, is pretty cool. Plant hormones. Yes, everything pretty much has some kind of hormone, the living things. We talked ad nauseum about the human ones. We are now going to talk about plant ones. So this is going to be tropism. Tropism is basically the, reacting to stimuli for the plants. Phototropism, photo for light. So this is going to be how the plant responds to light. So if you've ever had a plant that is always facing your window and you're like, but I want it to be straight up, and you turn the plant around and then it's facing that way, that is phototropism, because that plant knows it needs the sunlight, and so it will veer towards the sunlight. Most people do have houseplants and have seen this happen in their house. Other times, if you ever get a chance to look up, see in real life sunflowers, it's really cool because that's a great daily example, because the sunflower, the head follows the sun. And so in the morning, it's just limp like that. And then it follows as the sun is going along. So that's why around noon or so, it's just this beautiful thing. And then it slowly goes down. That is phototropism. We already know what hormones are, so we're not going to worry about that. This was an experiment Darwin did on phototropism because he wanted to know why. Why was it pointed that direction? And so he had a bunch of different sprouts, shoots, not sprouts, shoots, and he did different things. So one, didn't mess with it at all. That's the control. One of them, he just cut the tip off to see what it did. Another one, he covered the tip with something that no light got through. Then the other one, a tip that was clear so light could go through. And then another one, he covered the base. What he discovered here was that anything where the light could hit the tip of the shoot made it turn towards the light. And that's how he figured out about the phototropism. Then this dude decided to take a look at it also and cut it and put a piece of thing in between, one of it being clear, one of it not. The one that was clear showed that it could still pass on the information, which I thought was kind of cool. And then another person, did you have any idea this many experiments were done on shoots about, does it really follow the sun? I think it's funny. But again, this is another one where they did a whole bunch of tests to see how it worked. It is not only going towards the sun that it does. There are a whole bunch of other hormones. Kerbam. Here they are. Feel free to read them. We're going to talk about a couple of them on the next couple of slides. So, auxin. Plants produce this in order to do, it's at the tips of the shoots. I think we have a picture. If not, then I'll tell you. But basically, this is where it's telling it to grow, to go here, to cut this, whatever. The auxin acts by weakening the cell walls and letting them stretch when the cells take up water. So here is an example where they had a, again, I'm going to try to do the cursor. Hopefully you see it. This is the normal plant. This is where they added it. And so they took the wild type. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the wild type. And this one is where they underproduced it. unless my right and left's wrong. Remember, don't, dude, the hell dyslexia. I will flip flop them all the time because if I'm looking at it, I'm like, do I look at it this way or this way? But anyway, the auxin affects the growing. We're going to talk about growth hormone in a minute too, and that's where I was getting distracted. Cytokinins, cyte again for cell, produces the actively growing tissues, particularly in roots, embryos, and fruits. And these are what are going to promote cytokinesis and cell differentiation. If you recall, cell differentiation means it's telling the cell what it's going to be. That's what differentiation is. And the cytokines can balance the effects of the auxin for the apical meristems, apical like at the very edge, causing the lower buds to develop into branches. This is how it works. If you have ever had a bush, a hedge, something, and it looked all scraggly and someone said you need to cut it down and then it'll grow back fuller and you're like, but I'm trying to make it fat. How does that make sense that I'm going to cut it? This is how it works. Every time you cut the terminal buds, it increases. It tells it, ooh, grow fat. You cut them again, grow fat. Cut them again, grow fat. This is how they make those really cool topiaries. That's why the constant trimming, because the terminal bud is telling it you're done. But if you get rid of the terminal bud, it branches out. Gibberellins. This is the growth hormone I was talking about a second ago. So the gibberellins stimulate the growth of stems and leaves and the development of fruits. So this is what I was thinking of on that previous one. So this would be the normal plant. It's a dwarf plant. It's not supposed to be big, but if you treat it with gibberellin, it suddenly gets taller. The labs I was talking about previously, we also did one of this where we had two dwarf plants and one of them we gave the gibberellin to. So we got to see it actually grow bigger. And that was pretty cool too. Gibberellin-induced stem elongation can also cause bolting, which means something grows off to the side. It can make things go faster and longer. So this is bolting. So if they're trying to hurry up and get a plant to grow more, stretch out more, that's one way. This is how it's used in the food industry on a regular basis. Those big fat ones, those are the gibberellin treated grapes. So they have expressed more of the hormone to make the grapes be bulkier. The ones on the right, that's the more natural. This is why if you go to the grocery store and you are looking at the different grapes, this is why they're different. I found that fascinating, and I found out that's why I think I tend to prefer these smaller ones. I find them more flavorful. I don't know. Could just be me, could be a brand. I'm not sure. Then we have this one, abscisic acid. Let's see if I said that right. I don't know. ABA inhibits germination. So this is basically telling the stuff it's not time to grow. So just hang back. And a lot of these will just sit there and chill until it's time. And this is how you can have all those seeds packaged up and nothing's happening. They don't just suddenly sprout out of the little paper envelope that they come in. It's because this is still there. Then you wet them, you soak them, you put them in the soil, and then the ABA is washed away. And that's when they start to grow. The one that I think is the most interesting and helpful for everybody, well, helpful for everybody to understand better, is the ethylene gas. This is what the produce releases in order to encourage everything to ripen faster. So if you have ever heard one bad barrel or one bad apple ruins the barrel, or one bad whatever ruins the bunch, that's what they're talking about. Because when the item is, God, I hate when the words just disappear from my head. When the item is ripened, it lets this gas off. We can't see it, but it's encouraging everybody around it to hurry up and ripen. So if you have ever seen at like the truck stops, we've talked about love truck stops and stuff like that. If you go to truck stops or convenience stores, notice the bananas tend to not be in a bunch. they seem to last a little longer than if you have the whole bunch together, because as one starts to ripen, it's telling the others. It's also why sometimes you'll see stuff wrapped around the top of the bunch of bananas. It's also why if you buy that container of strawberries, notice there's slots in the plastic. And the strawberry in the very middle is always the one that goes bad first. It's because the strawberry is letting off the gas. It's encouraging all the strawberries around it to hurry up and ripen. If you spread them out, they will last longer. There are places, I think Amazon sells it, but I first saw it at a Whole Foods. They have these little cloth things. They look like dryer sheets that absorb ethylene, and you can toss it in with your produce, and it will actually absorb the gases, and your produce will last longer. Um, but keeping them spread out will help. But this is also why, if you have ever heard someone's like, hey, I got an avocado, I want to use it sooner rather than later. And people say, put it in a paper bag or put it in a paper bag with and they tell you another piece of fruit. That's why that works, is because that is trapping the ethylene gas to encourage the ripening. Okay. Much of what we know about plant hormones has to do with agriculture. So we can use auxins in order to either stall the fruit dropping or encourage it to hurry up and drop. We use the auxins and gibberellins to produce seedless fruits. That's how we got our seedless watermelon, stuff like that. There is a synthetic auxin that is used in a lot of places to kill weeds. And who knows if all of this stuff's good or not, you know? I'm kind of, I would like it if we could let our food be just normal. But this is showing preventing early fruit drop, because they don't want the fruit to drop just yet because it's not harvest time. And in my head right there, I hear Rabbit from Winnie the Pooh. It's harvest day. They go around here trying to keep everything on the tree until it's the time that they want it to be. Stimuli. This comes back to that phototropism. So plants are going to sense and do things. Phototropism, we talked about at the very beginning. There is also gravitropism, where it's responding to gravity. So if you want to do this experiment at home, I highly suggest it. Get like a radish seed or something at all that grows relatively quickly. Get a glass or a clear plastic and a big sponge and water. You can do soil, whatever, but you want to push the seed up against the edge of there so you can watch as it sprouts. You will see, no matter how you put that seed in there, the root goes down, the shoot comes up every time. You can even see as it starts to sprout, turn it around, and you will see that the shoot will move around to go back up. That is gravitropism. That is telling the plant which direction your root is supposed to go, which direction your shoot's supposed to go. It's pretty cool. Then we have thigmotropism, which is responding to touch. And there are these really cool ferns that will close up. It's called, I learned about it called a sleeping fern. Some people will call it a zombie fern because they're like, it's dead and it comes back to life. I learned about it in Belize, in the Mayan village in Laguna, because they called it the sleeping fern because they said it looked like it went to sleep. And they believed if you were having sleep trouble, you put it underneath your pillow, it will help you sleep. It does not. But it's cool because what happens is it spreads out like a fern. And when something touches it, it folds all its little leaves up and it looks like just a dry vine, like a very thin vine. And it works this way as a preventative measure, as a defense mechanism, because if an herbivore nudges part of the plant, it all closes up. It does not look appealing anymore. And then the herbivore moves on to something else. I think that's pretty cool. This is another example of thigmotropism, where the vine needs to wrap around something so it can support. And this is showing you the pea plant. You also see this with grapes. So if you've ever looked at like a wine vineyard, you see that they have all the stuff for the vines to grow up around. Plants also have internal clocks. And so there is a biological clock in there. They have cycles, which are circadian rhythms. For approximately 24 hours a day, it's using cues as to length of day, length of night, that kind of stuff. So the daylight stuff or nighttime, this is called the photo period. So the light period. We have some plants that when it's bright, that's when they're going to bloom. Some only bloom at night when it's dark. We have short day plants and long day plants solely for that thing. Short day plants, these are going to be more in the fall and winter when our days are shorter. Long day plants are going to be more like spring and summer when we have longer days. And then this is just, again, breaking all that down. We're almost done. Light absorbing proteins called phytochromes, chromes for color basically, may help plants set their biological clock and monitor photoperiod. Herbivores, already mentioned this, eat plants. Plants then try to protect themselves. So the thigmotropism is one way. Then we have physical barriers like big old thorns, chemicals like poison ivy, that kind of stuff, or cyanide. That's a good one. This is showing you a couple of things. This one is like my favorite. It's so cool. It's disgusting and disturbing, but really cool. So what happens here is the caterpillar is munching on the leaves because that's what caterpillars do. But the plant doesn't like being eaten. And so the plant releases this chemical that the wasp senses and goes, oh, hey, there's something here. And so it's kind of like the plant going, hello, hello. And then the wasp comes in and lays its eggs inside the caterpillar, killing the caterpillar and killing basically the bloodline for that caterpillar because when the wasp eggs hatch, they eat the caterpillar from the inside out. That's a pretty wicked defense mechanism for a plant. And this is the end for that. And now I have another song in my head. So I started off with Shakespeare Sisters and I'm ending with The Doors because they have a song called The End. And it's one of my favorite songs. So now that's in my head. All right. So I managed to get this done with enough time to still tutor. Yay. So this means everything for week 7 is now online as soon as you're able to see this. I have also put a lab into week 7 for you to print out and do on your own. If you do not have a printer, ask for help on campus on one of the days you're there. It's basically a frog dissection, but we don't have a frog. And so it's paper. You print it out, you color the different parts, you cut it out, and you stack it. And you basically put all your little frog parts together. And that is going to be a lab. You bring it to class on Wednesday, December 3rd, unless I give you more notice. So try to do that. And I guess that's it. And peace out.